do a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. So my name's Richard Sawyer. I'm a Senior Program Manager at One NHS Finance, and I'm joined by Becky Genvy, who's making everything work in the background. She'll give you a wave later on. She's Program Executive at One NHS Finance as well. She's just posted the agenda for today in the chat, so if you want to have a look at that. I'm just going to share sort of 3-4 slides and give you a bit of background to what this event is about, and then we're going to kick off with some fantastic volunteers, and we hope by the end of this we'll have a fair few more volunteers from the people that are here today as well. Right, so just give me a second, I'll just share some slides with you. Fantastic. Okay. Always try and have a bit of fun with the event title. So gone with the good, bad, and the efficient. And essentially, there's a fair bit of background to why this event was created. But ultimately, what we're hoping to showcase is sort of the warts and all, successes, challenges, and lessons learned, and really get under the hood of what automations are taking place with accessible software that's been procured, and also any open source stuff that exists as well, and sort of improve the sort of technical knowledge that we've got. And also there's going to be a questionnaire circulated, and a few more other things which I'll talk about in a sec. So I'm going to start with sort of the reality, as it were, of where we find ourselves in 2024. So this is taken from the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, and broadly what we're looking at is because of the dawn of technology, which is extremely exciting, of course. 60% of current finance jobs may not exist within 3 to 5 years due to automation and AI. Those of you that know Gartner, so the prediction there is that this change could happen in just the next 3 years, as of their report in January. So what we're seeing is like a huge shift in roles and a real move from transactional work to strategic, analytical, and influencing roles in finance. And the finance roles we know today, they're changing rapidly. And the NHS must adapt to stay relevant, and there's a huge benefit here, which I'll cover in a sec. I mean, sort of the dawn of artificially intelligent systems and processes. It's not a case of happening in 10 years. It's very much here, especially with the NHS's impending adoption of Copilot, which is going to appear in a lot of our Microsoft services that we know and love: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. So those of you familiar with ChatGPT, version 5 is out July next year, and that will be taught on all existing human knowledge, which is quite a statement. And actually that version will be about 3 times more powerful than the GPT that was first launched back in November 22. So what does that look like? What does that mean for finance teams of the future? So I've borrowed a couple of slides from Ollie Deacon, who's a speaker that is speaking on Friday, which we've actually run a second session of his. He's an ex-Microsoft finance director, and he speaks really passionately and in a very informed way about what the future of finance teams look like. If you want to attend his second webinar date, I encourage you to do that. That's in October, and Becky's probably posting that in the chat now, so you can sign up. There is a cap of 300, which we've already hit for the September event, which is demonstrating a great interest here, isn't it? So what you're looking at in this sort of slide is ultimately, in this new structure, there'll be a reduction in those transactional roles. There'll be an increase in data, AI, and strategic roles. And the technology integration, so we're looking around cloud-based ERP systems, data analytics, machine learning, and AI, they're all going to be crucial. And the skills needed, more sort of data science, analytics, business partnering, transformation skills. So really, we need to equip our teams with the new skills in data, business partnering, and AI to thrive in the future. So this is the sort of articulated path. And we can begin to and are already using tools, accessible tools like Power Automate, Power Query, Power BI, and as we develop through Copilot, as they become embedded in these softwares as well for sort of data handling and visualization. There's a continuous learning element, sort of upskill in analytics and data science. And the practical steps, sort of experiment, share learnings, participate in hackathons, which are soon to become quite a common thing as part of the Finance Innovation Forum's work with National Finance Academy and FFF, Future Focused Finance, under the One NHS Finance program that we're pushing forward to sort of keep pace with some of this stuff. So get excited to take part in hackathons moving forward. And ultimately sort of lean into moving with the culture of continuous improvement. So by adopting these technologies, obviously you can reduce manual work, avoid burnout, and allow our teams to focus on strategic initiatives. This is my last slide. And essentially, what we're doing in terms of actions as part of this first session is the first bit is sort of an invitation. So we're inviting you to participate in a sort of safe house discussion around formalizing the sort of emerging role of what we're not sure what to call. So there's actually in the survey, if you scan the QR code or follow the link in the chat that Becky will have posted, looking at what that role is, that finance automation engineer, with a view to setting up a network and look to sort of formalizing that role in NHS organisations moving forward. So the purpose is to sort of charter a route forward for NHS finance teams, benefits, will collaborate, innovate, and lead the transformation in NHS finance. And we're basically looking for technically savvy individuals who will have come to this technical RPA session and are keen to get under the hood and look at improving the efficiency of the processes for the ultimate, intention of bringing, reducing manual errors, reducing the manual burden of repetitive tasks, and ultimately bringing finance closer to improving patient care. The software skills network, which I'll talk a little bit more at the end of the day, that's built on the MS Teams virtual finance network. You can join that. We have various channels and SQL, Excel, Power BI, and Power Automate. We're encouraging a lot of content, people to post content and share what they've been doing. And then finally, there's the link for Ollie's presentation in October. Okay, so it's about time we can crack on with our first speaker. So in terms of housekeeping, essentially we're here to get under the hood and see how these automations can work and are happening across the country. So get your sleeves rolled up, be kind and supportive, of course. And if you have any questions, we'll make a bit of time at the end of each session so you can ask these innovators what they're up to and what a bit more detail on what they're showing with us. So if you could all put yourselves on mute if you haven't already, and I'll just take down my slides and I'll pass over to Jamie Rain. So Jamie is Innovation Lead at Midlands and Lancashire CSU. He's going to sort of explain Power Automate and Power Apps and how they can be used in your organisation. Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you. Just quickly share my screen and get the presentation on. Always forget which button it is.
Oh, it's the one at the top. That's, yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
tricky one. Right, you're all good. Crack on.
So my presentation is going to be about Power Apps and Power Automate and how we at the CSU have used those in our department really. So give you a bit of a background. So I joined the NHS back in 2013, straight out of college in an admin role at a provider trust before moving to the CSU in 2017 to work in finance, and I've been in the same team since. So I'm a bit of an Excel computer nerd, and I'm always looking to find ways of making improvements in the day-to-day work and helping the department get the best out of the technology we have. And sort of through that, I've been given the opportunity to do that with all the automations and innovation things that they're doing. and it's something I really enjoy. And then outside of work, I'm kept busy by my 6-year-old son and my 1-year-old cockapoo who's fast asleep at the moment. So hopefully he doesn't disturb us too much. So really, just in case anybody's unsure of what Power Automate and Power Apps are, I'll give you a quick Microsoft explanation of what they are. So Power Automate is a cloud-based service by Microsoft which allows users with the knowledge and process to create repeatable flows that perform the process for them. So it's very similar to what RPA does, but in sort of a dumbed down version. So it's a low no code option is what Microsoft say. So you don't need any coding knowledge to actually create the flows. And then Power Apps is sort of a low code application platform that enables users to create custom apps, again, without any knowledge of coding and programming. And then obviously with Microsoft 365, all of the applications and apps and sort of work together. So Power Automate and Power Apps connect to allow the automation data. The benefits, the efficiency, automation of repetitive tasks, streamlined business processes. It's cost effective because it's a low/no code approach. So again, it reduces the need for any development in coding, and again, the reliance on IT services. So all of the flows and the apps that we've created, what myself I've created for TSU, have been without any need for IT's help. So I've sort of done them themselves. So we gives you that real flexibility and things around the customization and flexibility means you can create tailored solutions specific to business needs, and build apps and flows that can adapt to change quite quickly. You'll also be able to do collaboration and accessibility, so sharing apps and flows easily within your organisation, and cross-platform compatibility allows flows can be used on mobile phones, tablets, on the desktop. So definitely lots of places where you can run flows and build flows and things. And then again, you can use the apps to capture and analyze data and automate data collection. So, and with going back to the cost effectiveness, all of the sort of knowledge that I've gained on Power Apps and Power Automate, I've done using free resources online. So YouTube, Google, ChatGPT, and things like that. So towards the end of the slide, there's some links and things to the resources I've used. So I'll be able to share those afterwards. And then, so how have we used Power Automate? So one of the flows that I created was for sending out payment breakdowns to care home providers. So previously we've done this using Excel macros, and it worked. It was a good way of doing it, but it was very slow, and it sort of stopped you from using Excel and other programs on your computer while it was running. So it usually took around usually took about an hour, 2 hours to do that process from start to finish each month. So we do this monthly for a couple of our ICB clients. So I thought, is there another way we can do this which is a lot quicker, and then stops my computer from being frozen up for 2 hours each month? So I've looked into doing it through Power Automate. So I built a flow which on average now saves around 45 to 60 minutes per month, which is really good for being more efficient. And again, one of the other benefits is that it doesn't stop Excel from working because it does it in the background. So I don't lose that 2 hours per month of my computer being down kind of thing. Another benefit was that macros were written by our BI team. So I personally don't have much knowledge of macros. So if things did go wrong, which they did because it was very temperamental sometimes, I'd have to go back to the BI team and ask their help sort of to fix it. And again, that slowed down the process. But as I've built the flows from scratch myself. If anything does go wrong, I'm got the knowledge to go in and fix it quite quickly. It doesn't go very wrong very often either, so it's a lot more efficient. It runs first time most of the time. So again, we don't have that downtime of things going wrong. And again, I haven't had any coding experience myself, so I've fully self-taught on it using my NHS finance training, so using the networks that you've got, and then again YouTube videos to gain that knowledge. So it's given me another skill, and it's something that I've enjoyed doing really. And so Power Apps as well. So that's something else we've built on. So I use Power Automate first, and then sort of having a play of what we've got available to us as a CSU. I looked into Power Apps. So the first thing I did for Power Apps was we've got our health and wellbeing network at the CSU. So we do regular virtual walking challenges within the department, and we used to record that data on a spreadsheet. So just to make it a bit more visually friendly and a bit nicer for people to use, I created this app. So it's just basically a data collection app. So we still collect the data similar way to an Excel spreadsheet. It's a bit more interactive, so we can see the progress that we're making and things, and what our next milestone and things is. And then we sort of have a little leaderboard as well, where we can see who's making the most steps and things. So again, I haven't needed any coding knowledge to build the app. Again, using YouTube videos and then attending a free Microsoft Power Apps course. I'd say with Power Apps, the formulas that in the background that you use are very similar to what Excel formulas are. So if you're good with Excel formulas, you'll sort of pick it up quite quickly. Things saying, again, it's something that we're now using to develop a work app for our accountability cards that we have for our finance system. So again, using approvals and things within the app. Again, so which makes it more user friendly for the staff who aren't quite technically minded and things. So again, yeah. So other examples of how we've used Power Automate and Power Apps. So again, we use it to sending out emails for our PHP audits. So again, we on a quarterly basis send emails to patients asking for bank statements to do their PHP audits. Again, so we do that using Power Automate, which sends out all the emails requests in one go. Again, that saves a lot of time having to manually send those emails out. And then updating form responses for our quality management system. So we've got a form set up to log various things, and then the Power Automate works in the background to log those answers and send reminders and things. And then again, as I've just mentioned, we've got our accountability card app in development at the moment. So again, that's using both Power Automate and Power Apps for the approval of our accountability cards. On the next slide, I sort of went into the templates that are on Microsoft. So here were some of the templates that are on Microsoft that you could use. So just to get your brain thinking of how you can use it in your organisations. So you can save Outlook email attachments to OneDrive, post messages in Teams when a planner task is completed, and then track obviously Microsoft form responses in Excel, and then send messages in Teams and email. So those are just a few of the many thousands of templates that have already been built by fellow Power Automate users that are free to use on the Microsoft Power Automate platform. And then so lessons I've learned, don't be afraid to make mistakes. It took a while to get these flows working as they should. A lot of going backwards and forwards, trial and error, testing them. Take the time to learn and understand what you want the flow or app to do first before you go in and build the flow. I'm a very visual learner, so I write down sort of the process on a piece of paper with what I want each step to do, and then go in and build those apps by using the resources available to you. So all the resources I've used are free and easily accessible. So in the last few months or so, ChatGPT and again Microsoft Copilot's available in Power Automate at the moment, has been really useful. Sort of give you the starting point of where you want to start with the flow, and then again start small and experiment. So I started with the small flow of what I want to do, and then built on that flow to get it to the final point, and then have fun. Really, is the main thing. It's something that I've been given the opportunity to play with in work time, and sort of been given the support and things from my managers and the team and the department as a whole, really, and it's sort of benefiting everybody by me learning how to do this and sort of having the fun to do it, really. And then these are the resources I've used. So a couple of YouTube channels which have been really useful, and a few websites, and then again Google and ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot have been really useful recently. That's it really. I'll just open it up for any questions and things. I know we've got a little bit more time, and we've got a bit of time to do any live demonstrations as well if anybody's interested in that.
Oh, live demonstrations. I know I will be. If there's any more thumbs up for live demonstrations, please get on the reaction button while we do the reaction button. Okay, so a question from Jackie. What are accountability cards, please?
They're sort of so on our finance system, we've got where people have got different levels of what they can see in the system. We've sort of got an accountability card to check that. So sort of depending where you are in the organisation and what level you are, you can't have certain permissions in our Oracle. So it sort of just covers that for audit, really.
Okay, got you. And so there's a question here from Stephen as well. So recognises the sort of benefit, and I guess this fills in a sort of question I've got as well, is how many of you are there at your organisation? So Stephen's question is, if you were off sick and something went wrong, do you have sort of other colleagues to solve or fix these issues? Or
not at the moment, but the plan is to put sessions out within our organisation to teach people of what Power Apps can do and Power Automate can do. We're sort of on the very early stages of the journey with it, really. But if anybody's technically minded and good with Excel and things, they'd pick it up quite quickly, I think, because I certainly have. And again, I've no coding experience at all.
Really. I agree. So I'm not even an accountant by background, and I've got a load of bots running around doing lots of lovely little tasks for me, and again, completely self-taught. So the accessibility for stuff like this, particularly Power Automate, it's really easy to get into. And at YouTube, bit of not fearing to fail, I think is an important bit as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And okay, so a question from Nina: how long did the Power Apps take to develop on average?
So the one we got for the health and wellbeing challenges, that was really quickly, because it's a very simple app that just collects data and then visualizes that data on the screen. The accountability card app, it's been a long process, but not necessarily because of the Power Apps. It's just been a long process of sort of completely changing the way that we do that process from start to finish, because it was very paper form heavy and things, so it's completely changing the process. But yeah, it just depends on what process you want to change, and really, I think. But I'd say it took me about 6 months to probably learn how to use Power Apps properly. So again, that was just having a play, sort of the first app I built was a timesheet app, so we don't actually use that, but it was something I built in the sort of the spare time I had in day-to-day work to play with it and stuff. And again, there's a lot of I think it's on GitHub. There's a lot of apps you can actually download that people have already created, so that saves you time of having to download to create apps from scratch. So again, using those apps and then just sort of changing them to your needs as well.
Yeah, the library in Power Automate is growing and growing all the time.
Yeah.
It's quite out of the box sort of situation. So with what's it? So Jamie Diak asked a question. Interest in setting up a message in Teams where a planner task is being completed. Is that easy to set up? That's probably a template that exists, in fact.
It's definitely a template that exists.
Yeah.
So it would be probably something that could be set up quite quickly. Just having a look at the templates now on my. If I reshare my screen, actually, that might be.
Love a live demo. Love the confidence. Crack on.
So within Power Automate, you've got a sort of template section. So you've got all of these templates. So there's, I don't know how many. I'd say there's probably hundreds, thousands. And then it tells you again sort of thing. So the example that I put in was creating a task in planner, so which is this one. So you just click on the template. It then creates the sort of links it up to your sign in. So it's linking up to my 365 account there. Just asking me to sign in on that one. I'm not sure why. So we'll just click sign in there. And then once that's all connected, click continue. And then you obviously need to select the forms. It's just to literally drop down. So select which form you want to. So these are all the forms I've created. So this is. So we've got a form. We can nominate a finance. So that's our awards thing that we do. So again, just stick those in, and then finding which to create the task. So again, this is just where you want the task to be sort of saved and things. So we put it in. I'll put it in more. Just trying to think which one I can use that's not going to set some things off.
Yep.
I can put it in my to-do list. I think that's my personal one. And then just give it a title. And then again, select which team you want the post message to go to. Again, let me select one that's not being used very often. And then again, the channel, so one of my test channels. And then click create. So, fingers crossed, it should. So yeah, that's created it for you as a test. So if we go to edit, now I'll actually show you the form, the flow itself. So this is what's going to be happening in the background. So when a new form is submitted, it gets the response details, creates a task, and then posts that message in Teams. It's simple as that. So fingers crossed that's worked. Or click on the button. So if I submit this form now, so let's do it as a test, a live test. What could go wrong?
I'm trying to think as well, but I think you've got all the dots, like the T's crossed. I think this is.
So click on my form, and quite a simple one. So just put.
Oh, it's a lovely looking form there, Jamie, as well.
Just put the test, and then that as a test. So that's been submitted. Now let me, fingers crossed. So as that's been submitted, the flow should automatically start running because that's the way it's set up. So you can set up flows to do. There you go, it's failed. You can set up flows to be automatically done on a response, or you can set them to be manually run, so you can pick run. So it's going to be something to do with the Teams channel or something.
Yeah.
But yeah,
failure is all part of success. You got to learn from everything. It's just the whole arc, I think.
Yeah.
I've learned to be a bit like, I love failure in a way, because it's like always teaching me lessons and all the rest of it. I think it's and this forces you to do it, but it's part of learning, I think.
It is definitely, and that's something that the first 3 stages of the flow have worked. The problem is with the message being sent in Teams, and it's probably something to do with the access or something in the background. But yeah, that's something that then you go back and have a look. I'd always just drop that error message in Google, because you never know, somebody might have had the same problem, and it'll save you time trying to figure it out yourself. But yeah, if I go back to my flows and give you a couple of examples of the flows I've built. So we've got simple flows so once we've done we do invoice validation for this system called DPS. So once we do those invoice validations, we send emails out to the ICB who approves the final invoice to say we've done this invoice validation. Here, the files are here. So again, I create a very simple flow to do that, which again is the simplest of flows, but it saves writing 3 emails. It does it in 2 seconds. The actual flow itself. So again, I'll quickly show you that. And again, so we manually trigger it when we do the process, and then it just sends out 3 emails to the different ICBs very quickly. And again, I built that for a colleague who does that process, and she can go in and run this flow herself. And again, because it's very simple as well, she knows how to fix it if it does go wrong. But again, it's very simple. It's just hide the names at the top. But yeah, it gives you an email template. So you put in the email template, and then pretty much it gives you you can put a link into a SharePoint site and things like that. That's one of them.
Fantastic. The chat has blown up, so there's no way I'll be able to keep pace with this. If you ask a question and we missed it, please. I mean, you can put up your hand and ask a question like, a human. That's welcome as well. There's quite a bit here on sort of how receptive your team or members of your team were in terms of implementing changes. So, like the accountability card, for instance, that took a long time. Did you find people were receptive or quite cautious about this new way, or?
They have been, yeah, and there has been a push over the last 12 months or so to get more automation into our processes, and that's why part of my role was created really as the innovation lead, is to help with that push and sort of be that face of the department to challenge those processes and think of ideas of how to get those improved and things like that. Yeah.
And I think in terms of the forum perspective, we're keen to formalize this role in existence in finance teams and this sort of stuff. We need more resource there to be able to create more capacity to do a lot more of this stuff, and it become a bit more normalized than what it is at the moment, which is fringe, which seems mad when you look at the hours you're saving day in, day out. On the licenses, quite a bit about licensing points. Yeah. So there's Power Automate Web, isn't there? And then there's Power Automate Desktop. To my understanding, based on some research we've done, as part of your Microsoft package that your trust will have, there are Power Automate Web, which is what Jamie's demonstrated today, free licenses. They exist. There's no need to purchase more there. But it's a case of them being switched on for you to a certain degree, and there is an allocated as part of your package and free licenses because Microsoft's keen to do that. Desktop's quite different. Is that about right, do you think, Jamie?
Yes, I've only got the web license.
Web version,
so I'm just checking now. I think I can't remember where to check it, to be honest, but I'll double check and I'll put it in the message. I'll be on this webinar all day, so I'll drop that in at the end. But I've got the free web version, which I think I did have to request it to be switched on. That's on my IT department, but yeah.
And good. It looks like Stephen's decided to start playing, which is exactly what we want to encourage as well. You've got another 10 minutes of your session, Jamie. I don't know if there's another.
I'll quickly show because I've noticed there's a couple of questions about the health and wellbeing app, so I've got that loaded. So
cracking, yeah, that's great.
This is what it looks like. So very simple. So this is sort of the editing version of the app. So when each screen has a page, I'll be careful about names actually. Let me just go back a step. But yeah, so if we look at the coding, we'll look at the home screen because that covers the names and things. So when you select that button, so that's the button that you would select. The coding is very simple. So just the navigate function, and it'll take you to that particular screen for that. The images are all sort of hosted outside of the app, so they're all on a SharePoint list, and then we're just linking in to that image. And then these steps, again, they're picking up the information from a SharePoint list, so all the data is stored on a SharePoint list. So again, that's just doing a sum from the SharePoint list at the gallery, and then timesing it by 2,000 to get the steps. Because I think on average every mile is 2,000 steps and things like that. So
we have a question actually. Thank you, Adam, for kicking us off. That's much appreciated. Crack on. What's your question?
It was really just a comment about the licensing. From my discussions with our IT department, the desktop version of Power Automate there isn't an additional license cost. It's part of the main sort of the main licenses that we have. For both web and desktop, there are certain tools built into it that are premium. That there is an additional cost to utilize those. So, for instance, if you've got a Cloudflow wanting to go and talk to a SQL database, that's a premium connector. So that was going to cost additional money to have some of those more advanced functionality. But on the desktop version of Power Automate, that SQL connection is actually built into it and is free. But it can't be run, it has to be run locally on your machine. So it's like going back and when you were using a macro on your computer, Power Automate Desktop, it runs locally on your machine. So but it can do more things than the cloud version can under the free licenses, well, as part of the licenses that we generally have in the NHS.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Adam.
I'll be contacting my IT department to get my desktop downloaded now. Yeah,
I think there's quite a lot of difficulty in getting the desktop version unlocked in organizations because of the tapping into SQL and free reign that might be given. That's not right, of course. Finance, should all have their sandboxes, and we're trying to do something centrally to sort of embolden this role in NHS finance so that we can have allocated individuals who can be able to get access to the desktop version as well as the web version, but definitely start playing now, as it were. Thanks very much, Adam. It's really appreciated.
I've just reading the question from George about careers for people who are passionate about RPA. So within our organisation, we've got a digital innovation team. So they work across the whole organisation and do a lot of RPA stuff. So there's definitely some areas there where people can go and join, develop their skills. I think they might be different for every organisation and where they are on their journey, but there's definitely jobs out there for people who want to work in RPA and things and develop in that area. I know I've done a little bit of, they've recommended some training on RPA for me, which I've done, which was free. But yeah, just having those skills and things.
I think the Microsoft resources are really good as well, to be fair to them. And also we have the software skills network, so that essentially sits on the MS Teams Virtual Finance Network, hosted by One NHS Finance. On there is 500 odd people who are, not afraid to ask stupid questions for anyone to help. It's sort of ask questions and help NHS finance setting. And there's a Power Automate channel in there. In fact, Paul, who's speaking later on today, is one of the leads for that channel. So I'm sure he'll talk a bit more about that. But there's a few videos in there to help people get started. It's sort of a basics video session, and then there's a few tasks you can do as you like. And we've got a few individuals learning on there. So the opportunity is pretty much everywhere to get started with this stuff. And if you get blockers in getting access to these softwares, we would really like to know about those and what they look like, because there's a bit of a myth busting element to start working with this stuff. And we want to try and support individuals getting to grips with this software within finance. So that'd be great. Thanks, Robert. I think said NHS Mail Digital Heroes Teams channel, which is a separate one as well. Is there anything else you spotted in that chat, Jamie?
I haven't, no, but we'll go through and answer what I can throughout the
Fantastic.
day. So yeah,
that's really good.
I'll dig out what license I've got as well for the Power Automation. I think it might be an E1 or E3 license at the top of my head, but I'll double check that and let everybody know.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing all that. That's really been really useful and really helpful. Yeah, thanks for a round of applause. Getting lots of digital round of applause, which is good. Right. Well, we're going to move on to our next speaker. Nina was a finance automation analyst until recently at Milton Keynes University Hospital, and we've got examples from Innovative Solutions, a bit more Power Automate desktop going on, so you get to see a sort of the difference between that and a bit of Visual Basic for those that want to look at how that's working as well. So Nina, are you with us? Thank you very much.
Hello.
Right. Hello. Crack on. Thanks very much for joining us.
Okay, no problem. Shall I share my presentation then?
I don't know if Becky has it, but if you've got it, yes, that would be, if that's okay. If you'd like us, oh, there we go. Fantastic.
All right. View as so the normal.
There's already someone cheered for VBA here, so clearly there's
Thank
some
you.
VBA.
Yeah. Still has relevance. It still has relevance. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done this, so bear with me. Oh, slideshow might help. Okay, is that all right?
Good. Yeah,
yeah.
Looks
just
great.
seeing the slides.
Yeah, bang on.
Lovely. Okay. So good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's feeling rested, refreshed, and ready to go, or as much as possible on a Tuesday morning. I've previously worked as a financial automation analyst at Milton Keynes University Hospital. Before that, I've been a technical analyst in various roles, mainly in transport and logistics, and I've also been a continuous improvement manager. I've used VBA since 2008 and Power Automate Desktop since 2023. So an outline of what I'm about to present. I'll give everybody an outline of robotic process automation, my own spin on it, and also give some examples of RPA, such as the trial balance data processing and reporting with Power Automate Desktop, forecasting data processing and reporting with the same system, goods received not invoiced, GRNI, data processing with Visual Basic for applications. And I'll also do a comparison of those two systems, Visual Basic for applications and Power Automate Desktop, and other factors to consider when improving these processes using technical RPA. Right, well, we've got three types. We've got the attended version, which automates applications running on a user's desktop to help them complete a process more efficiently. The end user can see this and it's manually triggered. And these are the ones that I'm going to present. There's an unattended version which uses bots, doesn't require any human intervention, can be run on a schedule, which is great. And it only notifies the user when errors occur, usually. hybrid version is the best of both worlds, and I'm quite interested in that. The employee and bot can work as a team, and they can work on 2 modes at the same time. So the maximum efficiency is achieved. Not everything can be automated, so you can mix the 2. Right, so robotic process automation is suitable for anything that's highly manual, repetitive, rule-based, having standard file types and inputs, low error rate, and is done at the same time every month or every week. Continual, churn of data. So just to highlight this further, here is a flow chart of how to select suitable processes. So basically, if it's highly manual and repetitive, whether or not it's rule-based, and it's common practice to simplify these processes before automating them as well, to try and make things easier to construct. So not always is RPA, the solution. It's probably better to go for something more technical, or there needs to be greater emphasis on system integration. Because it's so new, this is probably the case that the initial groundwork actually needs to be done to get the absolute most out of these systems. Right, the advantages of RPA, I will go on about the disadvantages a bit later. It optimizes resources, increases employee efficiency. There's cost savings, of course. And it also reduces risk due to greater accuracy and compliance. And it actually can transform digitally your legacy applications. So here's my first example of an innovation. I've actually submitted this to the Finance Innovation Forum. And this is one of the first ones I was working with in conjunction with David Boyles at MKUH. He's the Finance Systems Manager. And this is the trial balance data processing and reporting using a Power Automate desktop flow. This was selected because it's run several times at month end, whenever a journal is published. And basically, in order to run a report in Oracle applications, it requires multiple parameters. It needs to be queued, and also the data needs to be processed further once downloaded. It's quite an evolved process. The processes I'm about to present really are, and I found that Power Automate on the cloud just didn't have the functionality, so I had to go, Power Automate desktop with the nitty-gritty. Here is the as-is trial balance Oracle process. So the user launches Oracle via Microsoft Edge, and they select standard reports. They invoke a web launcher, then that launches Oracle applications. Very much linear. User selects journal's single request and submits the report request with multiple parameters. You can just see there. Wow. Lots of scope for error if done in a keyboard flurry. User submits no other requests. So there's several screens to go through, basically, and then you get the file downloaded. So in Excel, this is, the user deletes cost centers, trims, cost centers and objectives. So they can actually be used. The user saves a file. There's a decision diamond there, whether or not to go and run subsequent reports. So, one report can be run, or they can continue to do the monthly trust summary and do data checks as well. This is all manual and really quite involved. The actual challenge with automating this particular process were as follows. I mean, it's standardization at the end of the day. And colleagues can have different links to the main folder. Oracle can run slowly, and colleagues regularly need to reset their passwords on a monthly basis. So that doesn't really help with month end, really. Data cleansing needs another template because it had macro in. The file needs to be saved in the correct location. And files can get overwritten if the process is run more than once. So in order to solve those issues, I trapped errors whenever there wasn't a link to the main folder, the financial management general folder. There was also error trapping for password resetting, slow Oracle, and incomplete runs. Send keys and simple formula were used to select, delete, or trim cost centers and subjectives. Variables were used in the file path, so it's saved in the correct SharePoint folder as you clock over, the next month and the next month, it was dynamic. And file count was used to name each file with the time it was created, so nothing was overwritten, so you've got more than one version of it for auditing purposes. So a 2B process, you see, with the error trapping, there's more kind of decision trees, Has the user complied and given there was some interaction there. It's not a bot, it's an attended process. And if they didn't, enter any kind of file path in there, it would just terminate the process and close all the relevant windows so that it was ready to restart. If Oracle was loading too slowly because of congestion, it would terminate again. If the password needed a reset, you get the opportunity to reset the password. And whether or not the report had run in the requisite time, it's all about, working within limits of the system. So the 2B trial balance Excel process, it did all the the processing of the Excel file downloaded within the flow. So it deleted anything beginning with 0 or total. The cost center column, trimmed the subjective, saved the file in the correct folder with the correct nomenclature, and it gave the operator a choice whether or not to continue to run the monthly trust summary report and data check, which is then emailed to head of financial management. So here's an actual video. I hope this runs okay, of the flow running. So I'll click on this and I hope it runs okay. Can everybody see this okay?
I can't see the video. I can see.
Right.
Oh,
okay,
but you got a thumb up. Oh, right. No. I think so. What we've seen is the click of the MP4, but maybe that's because it's sharing the deck, not the screen, potentially.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Because I think I'm going to switch to another screen here. So I'm going to stop sharing this one and share the new window that's opened. Hopefully, if I can find it. All right, a media player. How about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, nailed it.
Okay, thank you. Well, here you go. I've got a couple of videos to show of these Power Automate desktop shows. So this is the trial balance running. So here you go. And that was a security issue, and that's like a servlet. But sometimes you need to put in extra actions to recognize extra images that might go in, and you have to deal with, once it's running.
Must have been quite weird first time you were sitting back and watching this.
Yeah, it is quite strange. You can video Power Automate desktop flows if you kind of isolate it to one screen, of course, because it gets a bit difficult. It's just more than one. This is just PowerShell. I did like a timer. So
Tracy was wondering if this just runs in the background, or how does
this was attended basically because of the complexity of the processes. I think the cloud didn't actually, have the functionality that I required, and also because the role is so new, that kind of the infrastructure wasn't quite in place. So I was requesting, more kind of cloud connectors and the like. But yeah, it's just that kind of initial groundwork that's quite difficult to kind of sort out when you're already there. So this was very much kind of desktop based, application based, and in order to share it with other people, I basically saved each flow as a text file and copied and pasted it in people's Power Automate desktops.
Did you have a lot of license access across the desktop?
It was really difficult to get premium because I had to justify it with a project request. So anything new, I'm writing out a project request. So I managed to get that. But I think in retrospect, I think there needs to be an initial kind of project scope sent before this role is kind of, instigated, so that everybody has everything in place and they've got, so that's why, I was using Power Automate Desktop, because that's the free version that everybody has. Well, they did at Milton Keynes. So it's completed in the queue, it's downloaded. As I'll mention later, it really is kind of reliant on each person's specification, because it's about image recognition and you need the graphics and the resolution. So everybody's needs to be the same. They can't have like personalized windows, because if you recognize like the taskbar is blue and somebody's gone in dark mode, it's going to fall over. So it's very much different. So it's filtered out anything with an asterisk or a total, and it trims things. So I've got a little message box. Do you want to run the subsequent processes? Yes or no?
So Tracy's asked again, so it's a little bit like a macro, but quicker, ?
I actually find the Power Automate desktop macros are actually slower. Because there's a difficulty of being in sync with the other. It's like you're in between two horses galloping along, and you've got to try and get them to go at the same pace. Sometimes the web browser goes too slow and lets it down, falls over, or it's just odd like that. I found macros are a lot quicker, but I find that if you do have some coding skills, they're not obsolete yet. They do help you get the most out of it, depending on what you're using, because I mainly use the desktop version. So it's a data check. It's kind of selecting anything that's #NA or zeros, and it copies it into the relevant report just to let people know. That's it basically. Successful run. All right, I think that's it. The video's finished. Right, so I need to swap windows. There you go. I'll put a little time in as well. Okay, so stop sharing that and share the presentation again. Okay, so are we back on the presentation now?
We are, yeah.
Richard, thank you. Right, good. Right. So, okay, that's it. Right. Okay. So basically, outputs and outcomes. Trial balances were saved to SharePoint, and the monthly trust summaries were emailed with the associated data checks. In total, there's a monthly time saving of about 2.5 hours, and it could be used as an automation template for the PFR because it also uses general ledger balances. So my second example of an innovation was data processing for the forecasting report, and also publishing that report on the SharePoint. The rationale for selecting that report, it had different expenditure forecast divisional files. Ranges were fixed for BI pivot and forecast workings tabs, and there wasn't a tolerance calculation. So it's very manual, as is process will show you. Oracle BI is used this time, not Oracle applications. Then they wait for it to load. They log on to Oracle BI. Doesn't need a reset. Yes, no, yeah. Oracle searches for the A120 report, and they open it. They filter it for ledger's short name, entire financial year, minus the adjusted months. User then clicks on OK and downloads a report. So the Excel process, this is quite involved. The user opens the latest version, expenditure forecast divisional file. The user clears the BI tab and then update the tab with the A120, so on, concatenates, cost center and subjectives to users of VLOOKUP, and they set the in-month actual to 0, refreshes the BI pivot, and so on. And it adds any new cost center subjective combos to the end of the forecast workings tab, basically, and then it adds tolerance calculation. So the challenges involved with automating that particular process is not all actions are possible if there isn't any data, and sometimes Oracle BI takes a while to load, especially around month end. Why don't we have departments log on at, with staggered logins at certain trusts, logging in at various times to reduce the server congestion? It's just an idea. They go, log on in waves, perhaps. Right. Colleagues can have different links to the main folder on SharePoint again, and there's also issues with colleagues already being logged in or needing a password reset. So I solved those challenges by bypassing actions or terminating the flow with conditional statements. I error trapped whenever there wasn't a link to the main folder, whether slow Oracle BI was occurring or whether or not the password needed resetting. Variables were used for converting calendar dates to financial dates, and that was also useful for the tolerance calculation and knowing which columns to hide. And we also used common tabs, and dynamic ranges were used for the pivots in the formula. So all the data was included. So the 2B forecasting Oracle BI process. So PowerShell was used to obtain the username, and the user inputs the folder path. If it's gone through successfully, then it uses that link to previous expenditure forecast divisional files. So yeah, it finds out whether or not Oracle BI is slow, if they're logged in or it needs to be logged out, start again, need a reset, do not pass go, do not collect £100. Then it filters the A120 file, it gets downloaded. And forecasting in Excel, the user gets to select their division. Now, I was thinking maybe for an attended, well, more of an unattended one, you can have that in a loop to go through each of those divisions. Expenditure forecast divisional processes, and it doesn't run if there's no data for that particular division for that month. I needed to supplement the process using additional Excel macros. So yeah, it corrected the date format, then concatenate the cost center subjectives, in-month actual. It basically did everything plus the tolerance calculation. So it gets the real rastro and copies down formula with tolerance check flag, copies down formulas, for the new data. Clears the filter, updates the month, hides future actuals and past forecast columns based on the current date. So a lot of conditional formatting, conditional statements, for conversion of calendar dates to financial dates. And then it publishes the file on SharePoint with an end message. And I've got another video to share. Here we go. So I'll open the window and reshare to the new one that's been opened. Okay, so stop sharing, reshare to Windows, media players, there's somewhere. I think it's that one. Can everybody see it okay? Hi, Richard. I think you're on mute.
Classic. I thought I was going to go the whole day without managing to not be the mute.
That's all right.
We can all see that. You're all good.
Lovely. Okay, here we go. So I've also submitted this to the Finance Innovation Forum.
So Tracy was wondering if this, can this be timed to run? So could it run at 6:30 in the morning, sort of thing, for when you come in for 8? Or how does that?
It's attended. It's attended.
Yeah.
So you have to be logged in to run it. So you could, but you'd need to be logged in, because otherwise you wouldn't get any login details with PowerShell and it would error out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the ideal was to have these run with bots, but it wasn't, the setup wasn't there. I did request it, push it. I went all the way, But often you're going to find that you're the expert and everybody else is just kind of having to learn on the fly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a hand up question. Carl, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks for letting me come in. I didn't know if you'd let me in whilst this was running, but as everyone took about 5 minutes, I thought I would just jump in and be cheeky. Nina, thanks for showcasing all this. Really interesting to see a live demo.
Thanks.
I've got a couple of questions on it whilst this is running in the background, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder based on your initial summary that you put up, which was sort of RPA versus VBA. What I'm seeing is a really good showcase of your skill set, your personal skill set.
Thank you.
But the question I've got is because a lot of this is attended.
Yep.
And I noticed on your first one that you ran through, you had a time saving of 2.57 hours. Yeah. But if a lot of it's attended, because looking at your two process flows, you've kind of got your two process flows. You've kind of got your Oracle-based one, which is getting the extract the data out of Oracle, and then you've got an Excel-based application, then using macros in the main to create an output file that's acceptable and usable, and then it does some other things like save it down or send it out or do other things in different file locations. Obviously, all that can be done in VBA script. So I'm just wondering, because it is attended, much like the question that's just come in.
Yes.
Is this just a different slant on something that's already there and rebadged? That when I've looked at Power Automate before, I've kind of concluded that one, it feels like slicker and visually more appealing than VBA in code. that it kind of falls into a very similar category when you kind of take the nuts and bolts and maybe the shiny bells and whistles out. And without a true sort of bot, I work at, just for context, I work in an ICB where doing some things like bots, which come at quite expensive license fees to be able to have them.
That was the issue. You see, the budget wasn't all that much, you know.
With all this sort of having to be attended to be able to get into Oracle, it kind of takes that. For us, we just thought the time saved wasn't as advantageous versus the cost of a bot if you really wanted to take it into a truly automated process. I was interested in your thoughts on that, and I didn't know if that was your thunder at the end in terms of your sort of overall review.
Well, I just find that at Milton Keynes University Hospital, Power Automate was just a lot more difficult to deal with than like Visual Basic. It's easy to get into, but it's really difficult to master. And it's not just, you know, having the right setup. It depends on the specification of the computer as well, and everybody has to be on board, because if you're doing this and the culture isn't there, you know, it's anything technical, it's not going to be maintained, you know. And it's a shame that so much work and so much testing has gone into this. I've done over 1,000 test flows, you know. It's very much got to be part of the culture. I will mention this later. It's something that, you know, kind of whetting people's appetite with flows, and it's like, yes, but what else, you know? So yeah, I totally agree with the answer. I mean, the question, you know, it's totally needed to be unattended bots. But the infrastructure needed to be there, the connectors needed to be there, because we didn't have anything to connect to, you know, SQL Server, and it's kind of key to have that, you know, set up.
That's really interesting, actually. Especially about the variability of the sort of the setup, the configuration. If people have got different even resolutions on screens or different themes in terms of dark and light, if it starts to fall over, that's a real issue, I think, isn't it? In terms of it being able to run. But really it's really nice actually to see someone run through a full program of what it can do. But because of the time, I was just looking at it thinking, how much quicker is that from someone just downloading data out of Oracle and actually just hitting the macro button that's probably already sort of recorded and written. It looked like the Automate was bridging the two together, really.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you'd have a bot running in the background and it should run swifter.
Yeah.
You know, rather than having to recognize things and having to get extra variables about the particular user. Just, you know, because I did get some flows scheduled. I did some other work on the neonatal databases, the Badgernet. That's quite, you know, the client haven't got a brilliant connection, so you know, you need reliable processes to automate. But it's just interesting to have those connectors and just see if they work, you know. Yeah. Anyway, I'll crack on with the rest of it.
Yeah, crack on.
Thank you. I'll see if this actually works. There we go. Okay, so outcomes and outputs of that particular innovation. So we had some expenditure forecast divisional files ready for consolidation, and there was a monthly time saving of 6.5 hours, because quite an involved process, and one for each division. But again, you know, this lends itself nicely to a bot that can be put on a loop. Hiding non-standard tabs led to a partially standardized format as well. My final example is the goods received not invoiced report with VBA. It's just data processing because it involves uploading it into Oracle and didn't have the system integration. So this is pre-prep with VBA. I wanted to submit this, but I ran out of time in my contract. So basically, it automates the first column of the subledger, splitting into 6. It was selected because there's a VLOOKUP of division from external file, which the name would keep changing. Multiple layers of description logic for code corrections, prepayments, etc. Splitting out payments. Reports emailed twice, once for comments and once after journal upload. So there's a wait for the comments to come back. The challenges involved with such a process. I mean, colleagues can have different links to the main folder on SharePoint. And you have to ensure the file is saved in the correct location with correct file name. And cost centers and objectives need to be formatted correctly, or else they can't be uploaded into Oracle. It all errors out. So I offered the solutions for error trapping whenever there isn't a link to the main folder, and if the file from 2 months ago is not found. Variables were used in the file path, so it's saved in the correct folder each time. GRNI included the cost center hierarchy, so there wasn't an external lookup, so that sped it up a bit. It was okay. Process, and it uploaded it into SharePoint with an email drafted to the AFBPs and FBPs, which I wrote in VBA. So another free macros was used to process GRNI after the comment update. So appropriate descriptions are added and each debit is balanced. And the cost centers and objectives were formatted appropriately. The as is GRNI process, I think I might be running out of time.
You've got 10 minutes on this.
10 minutes. Okay, that's good. Well, this is actually, it's the as is GRNI process, because this was successfully handed over to somebody system-minded management accountants at Milton Keynes University Hospital. So the as is process, they get the latest version, the A9110. It's pasted into the GRNI template, and there is a macro there to clear the file initially. And the first version, GRNI 1, it sends the email with the file for with the latest GRNI reports formatted appropriately. Then after 2 o'clock, all the AFBP comments are collected. Well, they actually work on the live file. The latest GRNI file is opened in Excel with that GRNI template in the background for the macros. Checks the comments are in the collect column. It's more of a manual check. And then there's 3 other subroutines, 2, 3, and 4. And then journal upload's done, which is still manual. And then journal templates saved in a trust-wide folder. So the first subroutine, it gets the folder path, financial management general folder, and checks if the file from 2 months ago for the comments, because you're doing the previous month, so 2 months ago to get like the previous month's comments, is it there? Has it been named appropriately? Okay, well, if it doesn't, it terminates, and then you have to rename the file properly. So it does sense checks. So it copied the raw tab and renamed the GRNI tab with the correct month name. It splits out column A into 6, and then it inserts the VLOOKUP, VLOOKUPs the comments from that particular file. It changes comments to do not accrue if it fulfills 3 different criteria. So those next 3 squares adds amount and journal headers to the right of the current data, copies all the tabs, bar the advanced filter that's used for agency subjective codes to the new workbook. Then it saves the file with the correct monthly file name, drafts the email, and people concerned check it. Then it's gone to AFBPs and FBPs and BCC and the developer just to make sure they're using it. It's a bit cheeky. The second subroutine does a lot more stuff for the DNA comments, and each one gets balanced with a credit against the summed, debit. etc. These are all being slides. GRNI 3, yeah, it does each of those descriptions. It's really quite involved, but this is all done by the macro. GRNI 4, yeah, that's a nice simple one. Saves file on SharePoint. Just the email with the hyperlink, and ends with a message. And ready for the journal upload, which is manual still. So obtain the Excel template from previous journals trustfile folder, and it's saved in a particular way, but as that is still manual, well, we'll gloss over that one. Yeah, so outputs and outcomes for the GRNI. You get the file, you get the accrual journal Oracle upload, and there's a monthly time saving of about 1.25 hours. And the journal upload only needs amended for new code combinations, and it's a really long, drawn-out process. It's even more of one without that automation for the data processing. So advantages and disadvantages of VBA versus Power Automate Desktop. Well, Visual Basic has been integrated into Office apps since the late 90s, and it's basically, it's not getting developed any further, but it's got everything. Power Automate Desktop, it's still evolving. It's only been used since 2019, but it's a really exciting tool, but it's not quite there as regards applications. And Power Automate Desktop requires an extension to plug into the web browser being used. And Visual Basic, it works the same on every computer. There is no issue, but you test it on yours and you think it's fine working on other people's, and you're going to fall flat on your face, because you're going to find that they've got quad-core laptops and yours is got 10 cores, and it's like, oh God, there needs to be uniformity in, and there also needs to be the infrastructure in order for this to kind of be implemented. Visual Basic for Applications works with all Office apps, but Power Automate Desktop can bridge into web browsers, as mentioned earlier, with that particular plugin. Visual Basic Editor is used to code subroutines and functions, but it's not particularly user-friendly. It's very much a blank canvas, and it might be quite daunting for those that don't have programming experience. So the best thing about Power Automate Desktop, it's low code, no code. You can use actions instead of coding, but you can also use Excel macros, you can call them, if you don't quite have what you want in that particular flow. And code can even be scripted in some actions. You can use VB script, PowerShell, or JavaScript. So factors to consider when improving processes with technical RPA. Silo mentality really does hinder process development, because it inherently requires collaboration with other teams or departments, because they're either, produce or own the data, or they might process it downstream, or they might provide the technical, resources. IT infrastructure is required to scale and protect these processes, to protect against staff attrition and make sure it continues. There's training investment required, basically, so to get the most out of RPA. Some coding skills are still needed. Yeah, and I found that process absolutely need to be standardized and simplified for automating. There's no point in doing different versions for different divisions. You need to have it the same for each, or reach general consensus, and then you could run it on a loop with a bot, and it's no fuss whatsoever. It just needs so much more testing. Power Automate Desktop, they're not as robust and require way more, testing before user acceptance. Basically, They often lose focus when recognizing images and require selection of alternative actions and delays so that they're in sync with the apps they interact with. Users' graphics and display settings need to match those of the developer, i.e. with no scaling or personalization. So if you'd like to have it on magnified, it will fall over. So I put in actions, to maximize the resolution and revert back to what they were beforehand. So, I mean, what Power Automate Desktop does need some remove scaling actions that need it on larger. But that's it, everybody. I hope you found it of use to kind of find out about what you can achieve with Power Automate Desktop, but it does come with some caveats, and it's probably not what you want to hear entirely.
It's the good, the bad, and the efficient. The title was on purpose, I think. So that's been
right.
really, really helpful, Nina.
Thank you.
You've got lots of claps in the
thank you
from the audience as well. Yeah, that was really interesting. We've got a bit of a VBA Power Automate Desktop rivalry going on here, so I'm sure people will weigh in later on. And I encourage you, if you are, let's say, opinionated in this area, to please participate and volunteer for the Safe House discussion to sort of trying to evolve and look at this role in more detail. The forms posted in the chat earlier on, and I'll drop it in a minute. But we're going to move on to our next speaker. Nina, thanks so much. And pleased to welcome Paul Ingham from the NHS BSA. And I won't steal any thunder, but Paul's one of our leads in the Software Skills Network that I mentioned earlier as well. I've known him for quite a while. So Paul, welcome.
Good morning. Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks a lot for Jamie for showing us the Power Automate stuff. It was really good, wasn't it? Showing us some working examples, and Nina going through the Power Automate Desktop stuff as well. I've got joined on the call as well, Dan Webster, who's also been part of the pensions finance operations team, and we've been part of a RPA workflow testing to see if we can adapt a legacy process to use RPA. So the solutions that we've heard so far have been around using Power Automate Desktop and Power Automate Cloud. So this one's about using a corporate solution called Blue Prism. So what I'll do is I'll get the slides up and we'll start the show. Okay, so just to introduce myself, I'll just minimize that. My name is Paul Ingham. I've worked in the finance systems, worked in the NHS BSA since 2014. I joined as a finance business analyst, and I worked within the pensions area and within the finance shared services area as well. In 2021, I got the role of a finance systems and improvement manager, and since then I've been working within a lot of the finance systems applications about the ERP system that I have, the back processing, etc., etc. I'll just hand you over to Dan.
Yeah, so I'm Daniel Webster. I've worked in the NHS BSA since 2012. I joined finance in 2017, initially on the accounts receivable team, and I took over management of the pension employer accounts team in 2022. So I've been there just over 2 years now.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Dan's been involved in the sort of process post implementation, so he's got some good examples of what we've experienced since we've gone live with it as well. So in order for us to have problem, we needed a problem. So like I mentioned, it was a legacy process, it was a debt recovery process, and it was originally a low volume process, and it's become increasingly inefficient because there's actually legislative changes, and it caused a number of invoices to be increased from a few per month to over 100 per month. The process itself is quite heavily manual, and it was paper based, and it relied on complex calculations. The system that we were working from, it had limited development capabilities and options, and that sort of hindered the possibility of us implementing a more efficient improvement within the system. So consequently, the invoicing process, it became labour intensive, it was error prone, it required significant manual effort and input to put the invoices into the system, and then we had to manually match them. And at that point, I think we paused them and went to emailing them. So it just created a very complex, convoluted process. So we thought there was an opportunity there to work within our different areas. So we had a special RPA team that's been set up within the NHS BSA, and we collaborated with them in the pension service area that we were working with to see if we could address them challenges using Robotic Process Automation as a solution. So a lot of the stuff that sort of Nina's been showing is really good to see the process maps being used, and that was sort of the approach that we took. We actually wanted to see what the as-is process looked like and see what opportunities there were for us to sort of evolve that process into a more automated RPA solution. So just handing you over to the as-is process. I don't know if you want to just go through the original process that we had in place.
Yeah, so the original process was very convoluted. This was a process that was in place when I took over the team in 2022. So as you can see from the slide initially, the finance assistant on the team would receive a notification email, and then I think to be honest, Paul, I think that's possibly the wrong order on there, because initially they would register the invoice on the system and input the data, and then once every single invoice has been manually entered, then the print is a batch job, and every invoice has to be then manually split into the PDF and then sent as a registered invoice and letter by email or by letter to the employers, which, as you can imagine, if it's a manual process for every single invoice, took up a significant amount of people hours.
Excellent. Yeah, that's true. And you was also having to collect them emails, send the emails manually to the employer as well. So it was taking around 15 minutes per invoice overall to actually produce it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you
So
can
when we
see.
think about, sorry, Paul, I was just going to say, when we think about 100 invoices at 15 minutes, it's a lot of time, especially with the changes to the regulations and legislation that we've had to work with, which it meant that the amount of invoices increased.
I think that's true, yeah. So from that process, you can see there's a lot of accounting activity there where they're having to do a lot of repetitive, monotonous, what I would call boring work, really, having to do something. And then there's also the risk of dragging the wrong debtor letter into the wrong email and stuff like that. So it was just prone to sort of like errors. And with the increase of volume, it just wasn't a practical solution anymore, was it, Dan?
No, not at all.
Okay, so what we did is we worked with the RPA team and we explored the different solutions that were available. So we did look at Power Automate Cloud as a solution, but again, for the development opportunity and the way we could get the information from the whole system, the Blue Prism solution really stood out as an option for us to sort of go down. So we actually chunked up the processes into steps and then started to see how we could use RPA to sort of fulfill them obligations. So you consider it to be process, it's been re-engineered. So we decided that the RPA would actually automatically receive the outputs and it would be able to split and organise them to be sent to the debtor. We also identified the RPA team as typical. I've just got the postman knocking at the door. Just bear with me a moment, please.
That was always going to happen during this presentation.
Thanks for joining us, Dan. Sorry I didn't get you on the agenda, but really good to meet you.
No, it's all right. It's a pleasure. It's my first time attending these events, so it's been a good listen so far. Just so whilst we've got a bit of time, I thought Nina's presentation very useful, very good information in there.
Fantastic. He's back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, right. So yeah, so where did we get to? So the RPA. So we decided the RPA would email the invoices directly to the debtor with a calculation, a breakdown, and that the RPA system would also generate an import file. So rather than the accountant keying in the data anymore, all they have to do now is get an output file from the RPA system and upload that directly into our accounting system. Now, what they did there is they'd obviously validate it. Follow me, I'm out of breath now. Let me get some breath. Accounting system. So yeah, so they need to have the data rekeyed. So they didn't have to rekey the data into the system. They got an output file that they could import into the system, and they'd validate that before committing it to the ledgers. So the next page. Okay, so once we'd implemented, well, before we did that, we actually took some measures. So as Dan's mentioned, we got 15 minutes per process, but with the RPA solution, that reduced it to under an hour processing time. Okay, so the benefits, I don't know if you want to go through them, Dan.
Yeah, so the benefits, as we mentioned there before, RPA touched on it earlier, each invoice took 50 minutes to process. So this added up combined to taking about 25 hours per month. And to be honest, when the legislation changed regarding the invoices we raised in particular, it meant a lot more work from the NHS pension side of things. Therefore, that 25 hours actually increased to about 35, 40 hours per month. And it meant less time to actually chase the difficult debts or do debt reconciliations with the organisations to try and work out exactly what was owed. But once RPA RPA had been, once we'd launched RPA into this area of the business, the entire batch of invoices can now be processed in less than an hour. So on a good month, that would be another 40 hours to be able to chase debt, to be able to contact the organizations directly. So it's had a major impact on our recovery efforts as well.
Yeah, so you can see from afterwards, the RPA only takes like under an hour for them to process that in the background. And because it is the Blue Prism solution, it is actually unattended as well. So there's naturally, they can set it off in the evening when they get it and then come back in the morning. They can see the file ready to be imported into the system, and their emails can get sent out to the employers. Okay, so a bit of the lessons learned. So I think we've already heard a bit of theming really around standardizing the data, and having your processes clearly mapped out is really important, so you can understand the steps that take to complete the process, identify where there's business rules or complexities within it that allows you not to be able to automate the solution. It's got to be tested, like Nina mentioned there, you've got to do some full functional system testing, user acceptance testing, and like I think what Nina was sort of saying there, getting in front of the user, you've got to have that confidence level. So sometimes you do find you do a lot more functional system tests to make sure when it goes in front of the user, you're not dampening the confidence by it not working straight away. So you've got to really build that example up and show the end user that it really works. And obviously there's a maintenance aspect to the solution. So we did partner with the RPA team, and they are sort of managing the sort of RPA automation in the background. And it's important that you've got them connections to sort of maintain a solution, because things can change from the host system. You might have to change the letter template or different things like that. So it's important to have them sort of change mechanisms and change controls in place just so you can counter all that stuff.
Yeah, I think, Paul, if you don't mind me just coming in there, I think there's just been a really good point made in the chat about considering the items for RPA, fully assess the full functionality. I just wanted to add, fully agree with that as well. So it is important to analyze what we've got within our current systems, and thankfully we've got our finance system, Paul, standardized across the business as well. So it means that RPA can sort of slot into that once we've standardized everything, as you've already alluded to there.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. No, is there any more questions in the chat, Dan, or is that everything?
No, I think that's it for now.
Okay, cool. Okay. So like the sort of lessons we learned, so going forward, sort of enabling RPA in the business, and again, very, very similar to as what Nina was saying there around the standardization of input data, digitization of documents where you can, so RPA can consume that. You need to have process mapping, detailed process mapping, understanding the steps, again, so you can understand where you need to go from and where you need to go to. System integration, so it's choosing the right solution. Like we're using Blue Prism in this instance, but you could use Power Automate Desktop, or you could use Power Automate Cloud if you want to sort of be a more citizen developer. And then Blue Prism's it's more complex, and you sort of do need a team to stand that up and work it. Employee training, so it's getting the people's buy-in and making sure that they're all fair with the new process, putting proper documentation in place and working with the end users to make sure it works. Like we've got Claire on the call today as well, who's joined us, and she actually does the process itself. So, and in the questions or anything like that, if there's any questions in specific that you want around from a user focus, just ask them in the chat and we'll be able to get Claire to interject on that one. I've just mentioned business buy-in. It's really important that you get that buy-in. Like Dan said, we're struggling to keep on top of the work at the time. So putting that RPA solution in place has enabled us to chase the debt, work through the reconciliations, and just be more efficient at collecting it and working with our customers. Exceptions management, error trapping was mentioned by Nina. It's very important. You automate a process, you don't see the process, so you really have to have that visibility of where things go wrong. So you need to step through that process, find out where things are falling down, and making sure that you've got something to capture that and sort of report it out, so then people can take action on the back of that. Just like humans, robots will make mistakes, and it's just a case of being able to identify them, just as we do as humans. We put in checks for our work that we do. I think we've got to be very thoughtful and do that for robot process automation as well. And again, change management, you can't change everything, like we'd love to automate all the processes that we do, but that's just not practically possible, and not all processes are suitable for automation. So it's just really making sure that you're identifying the right places to sort of target your automation activities on, look for quick wins, low hanging fruit, and then sort of build up and expand your maturity from there. Okay, so that's really the presentation for today. If anyone's got any questions or anything, it'd be really helpful to sort of we'll answer them if we can.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we've got a couple in the chat. If anyone wants to put up their hands, that'd be great. We have a bit more of a discussion. So Sean's got a question in about essentially Blue Prism itself. So generally regarded as an expensive barrier to market, use of bot time. Did you experience this?
Because we had that funding mechanism in place and the RPA team had been put in there to sort of look at using Blue Prism as a solution, what we really had to do was build up a business case, you know, and find out where the value and efficiencies are. Like as Dan mentioned, the process that we were looking at was taking 15 minutes. It was convoluted. We had no opportunity to sort of change the host system to get a better detail and better outputs from that system. So it sort of drove its way to Blue Prism solution. So we had a few examples that we talked through with the RPA team, and this was identified as one of the ones that could be done. There's a couple more that we want to do, but I accept that Blue Prism is a corporate enterprise solution, and you know you've got to have the business investment and obviously the team to sort of run it behind the scenes. You know what we've seen today is a good example of Power Automate Desktop where we can use that in. Like I know people say it's attended, but I've used Power Automate Desktop and I can actually run the browser bit of it in the background, and I can read my emails, reply to emails, and I can also update Excel in the background as well. So whilst they say it's attended, I think it's a bit misleading. I think when you say attended, it means you've got to have a PC switched on, and you've got to physically trigger that process off. You can, most of them you can run in the background. Now, when it requires you to actually interface with the front end, i.e. key data in, there's different ways you can put Power Automate Desktop. For example, you can have it so it does it in the background, or you can have it so it does it in the foreground. If you have it in the background, that means you can continue to use other applications while it runs in the background. But the environment's very, very important, and the configuration. But yeah, Blue Prism, you know, you do have to have a business case to really start using it, except that it's not everybody's going to get access to that.
Is there an argument for a slave PC, sort of, you know, office allocated to run desktop?
You can,
you know,
you might get red flags from the RT, because when that happens, if you log onto two PCs, you're effectively leaving one unsecured and unattended, if you will. Unless you have them next to each other, I suppose that's the practical way of doing it. You could have a desktop or two laptops, and you can log into each one. And also, I think some accounting systems might not allow you to log into the application twice as well. You know, like so, like it'll stop you from logging into two sessions.
So whether there's a virtual member of the finance team that exists in parallel almost, then you've got an accountability of, you know, it sounds like there's ways to, you know, not have entirely attended work.
Yeah, I was just thinking with Power Automate Desktop, you can get an unattended version. It's just that's where you start paying for it. So again, you know, like what Nina's shown us today, some business justification to maybe develop that and see if they can get an unattended solution and pay for that. So I think Jamie showed it earlier on. There were two columns. One said like your Power Cloud apps, and then there's another tab that said your Power Automate Desktop ones. Well, what you can do is you can get a premium license for your desktop version, which allows you to run that unattended in the cloud. And that's when you'll start seeing your flaws when you're a premium there, and you can run them unattended within a sort of like desktop environment. It's a bit more complex. And again, it's environment configuration. It's not everyone's cup of tea. It's, you know, I'd start slow. I'd look at Power Automate Power Automate Desktop free and see what you can do with an attended solution, and then maybe Power Automate Cloud if you want to do an unattended solution. Make use of the free stuff, and then identify where you need the premium features so you can build up a business justification and business case to get it. So it's not that expensive. It's just not out of the box solution that we get. You just got to have a business case, I think.
So it sort of links to George's question, but is there sort of your role in this? You've sort of got the RPA central team that exists obviously within the organization, and then you obviously have the people that it is happening to and their processes, right? And you guys seem to feature, or at least, am I right in saying that you're essentially the liaison between these two entities to be able to facilitate a, let's say, smooth transition? Is that?
I don't know Dan, how's it work for you working with the different areas and stuff?
Yeah, so essentially when we brought in RPA, the RPA team you're absolutely right, Richard. The RPA team deal with Blue Prism. I think that was one of the questions Ben had in the chat there. The RPA team completely handle the side with Blue Prism.
Yeah.
I've not had any direct involvement with Blue Prism, so I couldn't really feed back on that. But just to touch back on what George has asked about influencing others who previously do the manual tasks, the key important thing is to show them the positives and the alternative work that they could be doing in that time.
Yeah.
You know, there's additional time now for their own career, their own development as well. You know, it's given, you know, the time saved, it's given the opportunity for people to have a look at other areas of the business as well. The time saving, it's allowed them to focus on dealing with the difficult debt. And ultimately, as a recovery team that's trying to recover payments back into the NHS, the proof is in the results. It's in the reduction of our balances that are owed to us by other organisations, shows that the time is being used more effectively now.
And because of the nature of it, there's obviously quite a lot of, let's say, time working out the kinks, sort of, you know, trial and error, going through that,
Yeah.
tempering the patience of people's processes and going back and going, this isn't going to, you must have done quite a lot of like people management and expectation management in that, because that's, we've heard a lot about RPA implementations in other organizations, let's say at scale, that have ultimately failed, and the observations are myriad on why that is, but you know, some of them have been the lack of patience from, say, the leadership of procuring such an expensive system and then not waiting enough time to be able to get these processes, you know, embedded and fixed. Have you, you know?
Yeah, I think one of the things from that is, I think when you're improving a process, it always takes a bit of time, in my opinion, for the real results of what you're doing. You know, the time saved in 1 month, you might not actually see the true benefit of that till, say, 6 months down the line when it's accumulated. And then you start realizing, well, actually, a colleague's spending much more time being able to deal with this particular difficult debtor than they are just continually printing out invoices. So you're absolutely right about needing patience from both colleagues that are dealing with it and also the leadership team, you know, your senior manager as well. You need you need them to be patient. And I think key thing about any new process is being realistic with your time skills that you're giving as well. But thankfully, the team I inherited, they were all up for change. So there was no real like, they're always coming to me with new ideas. Where can we look at and implement RPA and other areas as well? So that's something we'll start looking at, you know, in the future as well.
That's
and
really
just,
good.
Yeah, just thinking about the service side of things as well, the limited development that we had on the system that was generating this calculation and the amount of information it used, it just wasn't practical for them to invest and build an application that could fit the increased volume and demand it needed. It literally were a couple of months, and it just went from a couple to 100, and you know, that sustained, and it just was too impractical for us to carry on with that convoluted manual process as well. So it was really, it's getting the buy-in from the source system as well, I think, as well as the staff that are doing the job. Like, yeah.
So what's really interesting is we did a bit of research to find out that actually there's about 70, 80 trusts across the country that all have Blue Prism somewhere in their organization, but the awareness of that, particularly in finance, was very low, but obviously the opportunity is significant. So what would you say to those that are aware that they have Blue Prism and, you know, probably have processes that could be in mind? What's the route of approach that you'd suggest to them?
I think like if they've got Blue Prism, it's highly likely they'll have a robot process automation team, and it's really engaging with them, and just, you know, maybe yourself having to think about some of the processes that you've got that are repetitive, that you're getting them from source systems where you're having to manually do a lot of work on that piece of work. You know, is there an opportunity for you to use Blue Prism and sort of approach that team and then go through some of the use cases? So I think what we did, we presented a number of different processes that we thought could be useful for our automation, and went through a triage process and identified the ones that were going to be more suitable for RPA, and then we sort of started working through them. So the one that you're seeing now is the first one that's been done within the finance operations area, but there are other initiatives going on throughout the business really in terms of using RPA and how we can use it to sort of make our processes more efficient and streamlined.
Fantastic, really good. Okay, so any other questions coming through on the chat? I'll just check. Dana, if you've seen any others.
No, I'm just seeing here Nina mentioned there's an issue RPA being properly integrated with systems. Workarounds may further complicate. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it depends on the limit. You know, we've all got different finance systems, I guess. So it is just seeing how that goes. I know from our side of things, we've got an Integra test system as well, which we utilised intensely before any RPA went live. Because there is a concern that if it goes wrong when it's live, then the RPA team may pull their support and say, until you can confirm that your finance system is going to be able to correctly put in this data in the correct manner, then RPA wouldn't touch it. So we had to go to them as part of this case study that Paul mentioned to show them that our finance system could handle the RPA system as well. Hopefully that made sense. It made sense in my head.
No, it is. Thanks, Dan. Right, okay, gents, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And I'd like you to take part in the Safe Paths discussion if you'd be interested. Please do fill in the form. It would be good to have a chat through some of this as well.
Definitely, Richard. Fantastic. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Have a good day.
Cheers. Thanks both.
Bye.
Okay, so well, I finished sort of a bit early, so we'll give you back some time. We're always saving time with these efficient processes, so why wouldn't this event be any different? So we've got a break now. I'm going to go run to the shops and grab some lunch ahead of an early lunch today. So we've got Adam Pinder from Stockport kicking things off at 11:25. So if you want to go make yourself a cuppa, grab some lunch, and we'll pick back up then. Thanks very much to everyone, and see you shortly.
Right.
Hi, Ron. Welcome back.
And shoot.
Got another minute. I think Claire's comment in the chat's really encouraging. I think we need to hear as many more examples as possible about RPA happening positively to teams and experiencing the benefit and strengthening the working relationship. We're hoping to increase sort of the messages outbound about positive experiences with automation in finance, because there's quite a lot of myth busting that needs to be done. I think these sort of case studies or examples are going to be really helpful. So that's good to hear, Claire. Right, it's 11:25. We're going to kick off, and I'm pleased to be able to be joined by Adam from Stockport. Adam's going to talk to us about MS Forms and Power Automate, if that's all right to hand over to you, Adam. Welcome.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So just a bit about me. I'm Adam Pinder. I'm the financial reporting developer here at Stockport, which is a job title I came up with. I've been working at Stepping Hill Hospital since 2002. I started as an apprentice at the age of 16, so I've been here 22 years. And across that time, I've done a lot of sort of projects, sort of automating processes using VBA and improving the way we work and changing our processes so we can work more efficiently. And it's only been in the last few years that I've actually started dabbling with some of the more traditional, some of these newer sort of automation tools. And I've been thinking a lot about how information flows into our department and out of it. And so I just wanted to sort of take you through this journey that we went on, sort of automating this process. So it was quite a simple process, really. And it was all the requesting new cost center and account codes and subjective codes and getting them set up in our finance system. So can you see my screen? Does it come up?
We can. Lovely slides.
Fantastic. Thank you. Copilot came up with that. So here at Stockport, to give you some information. So we're a medium-sized DGH, annual budget of 440 million, budgeted workforce of 6,000 whole times. And we analysed these costs over 800 cost centres, and we analysed the spend over 1,200 subjective codes. And on average, over the past 2 years, we've had 5 new cost centres or subjective codes requested to be set up. So we're quite flexible in our finance system that we do allow new things to be set up. I know some trusts have it a bit more locked down, a bit more fixed, but we're quite flexible here at Stockport. So where were we? So it was all paper-based. The forms were, so when I first started, and sorry, 1 second, need to get. So yeah, so we're all paper-based initially, and we had physical signatures on there, and request forms were then, once they were signed off and set up, they were put in a ring binder. And so after a few years, we decided we should automate this process. And this is before Power Automate, before Office 365 and all this. Our attempts were to automate this process. Email a spreadsheet template for approval, inserting pictures of signatures into spreadsheets, printing off the signed spreadsheet forms to then be put in a ring binder again. So I'm sure we can all relate to how things used to be like that. So what changed? So COVID and lockdown happened. We weren't in the office, so nobody could actually physically sign these forms. The communication was all through email inboxes were getting full up, and things were being missed. We then got Office 365. So I had some new functionality to play with. We were fortunate that we were one of the early adopters in our trust, and IT gave us carte blanche to have a go, and they didn't lock anything down, and they said, just see what you can do. So and they were really supportive and sort of encouraged us to try things out. Fortunately, I'm quite techie, and I was able to sort of see the potential in some of these new tools that were sort of being offered. And I felt that setting up new cost centers, this is a simple process that actually should be quite easy to automate, and it would be an ideal proof of concept. So then I can then get buy-in from others. So what did we do? So first off, I started off with the Microsoft Forms template, and I designed an input form. So very similar to what we were previously doing with our spreadsheet forms, similar formats. So I generated that in Microsoft Forms, used lots of drop downs in there. So then we can then fix what they could have in there. So on a spreadsheet, you could type anything into it and it would quite often be wrong. So we were able to sort of build some data validation into it, so we were able to use these drop downs. And also I was able to use the branching function in Microsoft Forms, which is really a very good tool in there, which allows you to have different drop downs depending on what, based on previous entry, and I'll show you that later on. Then we went and started looking at Power Automate. So when dealing with Power Automate, it's about triggers, and we've looked at stuff already this morning, which is sort of manual triggers, and I think it was Jamie also gave a demonstration of the trigger being from a form being submitted, which is what we used in this scenario. So we used the submission of the form as a trigger to start this flow, and then we used multiple approval steps in our flow. So it went via different individuals, which I'll talk through in the example later. But we're able to sort of have this multiple step approval process. And then we were able to then generate, based on the final outcomes, we were then able to generate an email back to the requester to tell them whether it had been approved or rejected and the reasons why. So demonstration right here. So let me change screen. Bear with me, please. Stop share. I think it's screen 2. No, that's not the right one. On that one. Sorry.
It's all right. We love live demos and we understand how they go. Don't worry. All good.
Why is it not let me stop sharing? I made a note which screen was which, and it's just changed it for some reason.
Oh, of course it does. Why wouldn't it? Just makes it difficult for you.
Yeah. So I'll go with this one, see whether this one comes up right. Yeah, this one looks like it's coming up right. And so wait for that to disappear. Thank you. Right, so this is the original form that we had, where you got to choose what you want, and then free text and other boxes for reporting hierarchies and different. So for instance, if it's a pay code, then it would need these items ticking so that it could be then set up correctly in the finance system. So our form looks like this. So again, so where they would put in there the account code that they want setting up, the description, reason, all free text. But then this is when we start getting to some of the drop downs and some of the branching functionality. So with I&E category, you've got there are different I&E categories. So if, for instance, if I chose other income, it would then allow me to, it's got more questions for me to answer. So account rules and other referencing that we'll need to put in. But if I change this to, for instance, to show us pay costs, I've got different questions for it to ask. So that branching functionality, so then I can then go into, well, it's consultants and it's bank staff, and now we'll get my other questions here. So it's all that, it makes it easier for the end user to actually to populate, and so it makes life a lot easier. And then at the end, they hit submit. So if I go on to the flow, let's just move this. So just bear with while it loads. It's one of the things it is annoying with Power Automate and some of these web forms these days, that it can just take that extra time to load up when it's web-based. So you should look in edit. So this is the sort of the back end of what you've partly what you've seen already, what Jamie was talking us through and gave us a demonstration of, where when a new response is submitted, get the response details. I've got some extra things in here. So first off, based on our reporting hierarchy, there's a specific reference that we need to generate for our finance systems manager to put in the system to state what part of the relationship hierarchy it needs to go into. So it calculates this, so it has this functionality of being able to do calculations, and it's looks horrible in here, but actually it is simple realistically, but it's able to sort of join together different data, different entry points to actually then concatenate stuff together and do some calculations within the flow. We start an approval process. So we're starting this approval process here, which it comes to myself for me to review. And as part of that, it's pulling through the contents of the form into this approval process. And this is an approval process that's built into Microsoft Teams. So it's pulling that information out of the request and putting it into a format that's quite nice to look at. And it comes through with me on here to approve or reject. So it comes through to myself, I'm reviewing it. I'm not the one setting it up in the system, but I'm reviewing it to go, yeah, I agree, that makes sense from a financial management point of view, and it sits in our reporting hierarchies in that way. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So this is where it's generating that form there. So then if I hit yes, I agree with it, it starts the second approval process, which is then going to our systems team, and it's the first to respond here. We can choose it that everybody must approve or first to respond, and also you can do custom responses as well as part of that. And again, they've got it set up in there, and they've got this extra field on here that was calculated earlier on in the flow, so that it's relevant, because that's the bit that's relevant for them setting up this new cost center. So we came across an issue which I think was brought up in the chat over the break. I think, where was it now? It was, I think it was from George. I think it was. Yeah. So George Bentley says, general question: does anyone else's Microsoft 365 have access to Outlook? Because I've just checked mine and it does not. Our IT department have advised it's the same for our entire trust. So it might limit my ability to make a connection with Power Automate. So we had this issue as well. And what it is, it's where your email is hosted. Is it hosted on a Microsoft Exchange server under the Microsoft sort of cloud, or is it being hosted on site on premise? So we had this issue where we couldn't connect our emails to Power Automate. So we then had to do some research and do some Googling, and we found out that you could actually get SharePoint to send an email. So we have these here, send an HTTP request to SharePoint. So these are all emails that are being generated by SharePoint back to the original user. And in here, it gets a bit complicated. It's got to be in a JSON format, but it actually allows you to create custom messages and pull information in from information submitted in the previous requests and generates custom emails in this JSON format, which then can then be sent back to the original user. So the original user doesn't need to be signed into Microsoft Teams if they don't have that installed, for instance. It can all be done via email. And it doesn't matter whether their email is hosted in the Microsoft cloud or on-premise. So that's one way of getting around that. So these are all of our flows in here. So that it's simple compared to some of the other automations we've seen, but this is an effective one. That's sort of a clear process, but when you break it down into these different steps, it is complicated, but not overly complicated. So we have then, yes, click cancel on that one. So we have now got this audit history as well with this now. So it logs it within Power Automate and under the approvals. It's got it in here, so got the history of the flows are all built into the system. So we can go back in time and go and see earlier ones and see requests going back to the beginning. And also we have a file which is saved in the cloud on the SharePoint, where it's got exactly when things were when forms were submitted, who by, and what the contents of what those different requests are. And we've got that full visibility of what's been requested and what's coming through this process. So let's stop sharing for that one at the moment. And let's go back to my presentation. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. So what were the outcomes? So code was created a lot quicker. So because there wasn't emails flying around trying to dig into those emails and find the forms and then sign them off with copy and pasting of images of signatures and then forwarding it on to somebody else. It's a lot more slicker. And also I can sign it off on my phone. I'm signing it onto Teams on there. It pops up. I can look at it and go, yeah, that looks sensible, approve. And it goes on to the next stage nice and easily. So things we were doing things in a much more quicker, proactive way. There was less paper. and less emails flowing around the system. We had that full audit or history of all the requests and the approvals and why things were rejected, and there was more instant feedback. People are now more comfortable and confident in using Office 365. I've got colleagues now setting up forms, not with any automation with them, but actually creating these forms and sharing them and getting, like, for instance, we provide some training, and all of our feedback forms are on there now, and there is more sort of buy-in for using some of these newer tools that we haven't traditionally used in the past, and it's there available under our license, so let's just go out there and use it, and it makes things a lot easier to get information. And there's also an appetite to automate more processes. Now that we've seen this, we can see what the potential is, and that proof of concept has worked, and we've got more buy-in from sort of like senior finance leadership and others in the organization of seeing the potential of it and trying to sort of share that that good practice to go, actually, this is what we can do. Costs us no extra money. Let's try and use it. What other things can we do? So the challenges. It was, whether your emails are hosted on premise or in the cloud, it does make a difference. And also where your files are stored. Are they stored on a local network, or are they in SharePoint on OneDrive? Because if it's on OneDrive, you can then share it and use it more effectively. But if it's on premise on a shared local network, you can't connect to it as easily. Things are hard coded. It's not always easy to update, and it can be daunting to non-technical people. So it's hard. Those processes are hard coded to flow to me and to flow to my colleagues in the systems team. If I was to leave, then we'll have to then go in and manually change those flows. So we have documented how to make those changes, but since we created the flows in Power Automate, it's actually changed. Microsoft have updated it, and the look and format of it is slightly different. So our screenshots that we had previously are no longer relevant. So we'll need to also bear in mind actually keeping that up to date. Some of our documentation, it's not just to set it once and go. Oh, sorry, the light's just gone off in here. I've not moved enough. That's better. So some of it is hard coded. You might be able to do some fancy things with dynamic lists and things, but that's a bit above me at this moment. But and it can be daunting to people that are not familiar with this software. What I've shown you here is web-based. Obviously, we know there's the Power Automate desktop, but for Power Automate, for these instant flows and for the forms and other some of the other functionality, newer functionality in Office 365, it's web-based under our licenses generally, and that can come with limitations and can cause a few issues, and it be a bit slow. It's not as responsive, and it's also getting used to just working out of a web browser. It's a different mentality that you have to think about sometimes. In this scenario, you can't edit the request while it's in the authorization workflow. I've had numerous times where I just wanted to make a slight tweak to what somebody's inputted, and I've had to reject it for them to resubmit properly or resubmit correctly. And it could have been just a slight change, but I couldn't actually, in this workflow, I couldn't actually make changes myself. It had to be a reject and start again. Using an apostrophe in a narrative can occasionally break things. When having to use the JSON format for the HTTP request for SharePoint to send out the email, there's a lot of apostrophes in there, and it uses that as part of the structure of the data. And if you have an extra apostrophe in there, it breaks, and it's because it thinks that it's entered a text and it's starting to go into another function. So it's just to bear in mind, if you are having to use an apostrophe, if in an import, you might need to cleanse it before it goes any further, or just not use them. So for instance, if I put an apostrophe in the rejection or the approval and put a comment in there, it would then, if you put an apostrophe, it will just break the flow because it thought it was needing to do something else. So it's just bear in mind, if it's one of those characters that can occasionally break things. So any questions at this point?
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. There's a few in the chat, actually. Yeah. So Nina's asked, do you think there is potential to add the MS form for new cost centers and subjectives to the end of an existing report process, so such as the GRI?
So this is based on user input. So this is based on an individual wants something setting up. So it's putting that initial request in. It's not actually coming from a different system or a different data source. This is a process that is coming from an individual wanting something new, setting up.
Yeah.
If it was, if you were wanting to, so with this process, it's using the Microsoft Forms, and I don't think you could also populate the contents of a Microsoft form.
I don't think you could. I mean, I bet you
that
could, but yeah.
You probably could.
Yeah,
but it's the actual, that wouldn't be the appropriate process.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the appropriate tool to use in that scenario.
Yeah, I agree.
And
so we have a question from Paula as well. So how have you set up the forms in Teams in terms of users? So setting up those. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I designed the form as an individual, and then I was able to pass that form onto a SharePoint group to be the owner. So everybody in that SharePoint group can use that form. And we put links to that form on our SharePoint site, so which is again within that same SharePoint group. And also those flows, I was able to transfer ownership over to that SharePoint group as well. So then it all then is now, even though I set it up and designed it, it's actually owned by the SharePoint group. So then everybody who's got the relevant access in that SharePoint group can actually edit that flow and see that, and it makes it all just work. And that's that future proofing of, if I ever get run over by a bus type mentality, it's all access is there. You don't have to worry about sort of getting user access set up or changed. So you prototype under yourself, and then once it's ready for publication, putting it into a sort of into a group that other people are in. Does that answer the question?
Brilliant. I think it does. Yeah. That's great. I can't see any more questions.
Are the drop downs for expenses type manually typed in or lookup? So yes. This is a limitation, to be honest. So the drop downs are manually typed in. So when we've changed things, we've had to manually go in and rechange those things again. They're not dynamically linked to something else. Okay, so that's within Microsoft Forms. That is a limitation of that system. If it's a set once, and then if your business logic changes or hierarchies change and all that, or different reporting categories are needed, you need to go back and manually change it. Okay. I am looking at which is really my next slide, which I'll just talk about now. So I'm looking at now using Microsoft Lists, which has more dynamic elements to it, which also allows for editing the requests while they're in a workflow. It's not just a snapshot and then that's what gets carried through the entire process. You can actually build in pauses into that depending on how your workflow is set up. And so I'm experimenting more with lists to then actually have it so you're just changing it in one place, then that could then propagate through to other things. And I think eventually I will be moving on to Power Apps. I've just not built up the courage yet to learn that yet, but that is probably the direction of flow. So at the moment we are prototyping a new process for our cost saving schemes and how that is logged and authorized in the organization. So if can I just drag that across rather than stopping and sharing screens? Yeah. So this is our sort of process map for what we're doing for the, can I zoom in? This is the process map for doing our step for our cost saving program, where we want different individuals, non-finance people. So we're involving the executive directors, as well as divisional leadership, and a lot more different outcomes and different scenarios to come into play, and informing different people at different stages. So there's a lot more complications to this process, but this is what we're currently sort of developing at the moment and prototyping. And this is what we're using this based on, not on Microsoft Forms, but on Microsoft Lists, which then we're building then triggers based on different input boxes at different points and validating some of those things so that we can have a lot more complicated process, which hopefully we'll be able to bring to you next year once we've got it up and running. Hopefully you'll invite me back. So this is where it can be quite a powerful tool to actually then to flow these things around our organization. And it's things that potentially could change quite a lot, but it should be quite straightforward to update your input forms down the road. Because we all know we set something up and then 6 months later you want to add something else to that form. A few months later afterwards, we want to make a tweak here. And it's all within our gift to actually change these things and update them and make it work for what we want it to do. And it can be it can be quite reactive to actually what the business need is.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Adam. I think that's a really good step-by-step explanation of how you get from papers in a drawer all the way to full scale, automating that whole process. And that's an exciting next step as well. I've dabbled my toes in lists, and the possibilities with that is quite endless. So I encourage you to run in there and see what you can break or make work for you.
Yeah, and I subscribe to quite a few tech things on YouTube and some of the Mr. Excel and things like that. But they've sort of like talked about how people use spreadsheets incorrectly. And realistically, these days we should be using databases, but then SQL databases are too complicated sometimes and are too large scale. the small scale databases that we need to be using, and that we use Excel as a database. But it looks like Microsoft Lists is that interim database that we can store data in it in a structured way that actually is can be then, because it's in that Office 365, it integrates with Power Automate and I think Power Apps as well, and other things.
Yeah. I think it's a good feeder, isn't it? So
if
anyone's doing some fun stuff with lists, please do get in touch or fill in the form. We are badgering you with in the feed, because I think that would be really useful. It's a missing link in a way.
It is, yeah, because obviously the large scale RPA sort of with bots and everything, it's good for transactional or transforming data, but actually how we actually get that, some of that smaller data sets, and the sort of from things from a human rather than from a system, and how we can actually collate that data is through things like forms and Microsoft Lists, because Microsoft Lists, once you've set it up, you can easily, it automatically designs a form as well for an inputting into it. So there's a lot of scope there.
Absolutely. Adam, thank you so much. That's been really, really helpful. And really good to see how you're getting on. And of course, you're welcome back next year and any time. Want to hear how you get on, because I think, yeah, we're all on different stages of a journey, but sharing that, I think, is going to help everyone all the way around. So, yeah, really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Gosh, I've learned a lot today. Right, on to our final speaker for morning/afternoon. Joseph, if you're with us, you're going to talk about how we can break out of the digital doghouse. Loved this title of session when I heard it, and hopefully you are.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just sharing my screen. That's all right with everyone.
Fantastic. Take it away.
So hopefully you can see that. Move that over there.
We can, yeah.
If you can't, yeah, great. Okay, so I'm Joe Tinsley. I'm the systems accountant at Pennine Care. And while I have responsibility over maintaining the financial system, what I actually spend most of my time doing is redesigning and implementing new processes in the finance department. And that's so we can provide a better service to those people out in the wards and on the front line. So yeah, one of the most impactful ways we've done this is through RPA. So, but what I want to do really is take you on our journey, and to do that, we're just going to look at where we were. So, April 2022. So, if you cast your mind back to early April 2022, COVID was much reduced. The digital landscape of the NHS was changing, of how we were working. You know, going from being in the office 5 days of work to everyone working from home, then to a hybrid situation. It was all kind of up in the air. At Pennine Care wanted to see how well our digital strategy had coped with all the changing, so we commissioned a review. And the review came back with the following. We had a below foundational level of digital maturity with an average score of 1.4 out of 5. And compared that with the digital footprint across Greater Manchester, their average was at 2.2, and our nearest competitor was at 2.5. So we weren't in a great position, really. But the good thing about being towards the bottom is you can only go up. Now, this was also reflected within the finance team as well. So if we look at the finance team, everything was Word or Excel-based forms that we had to email out to people when they were requesting something. We're only really using 50% of our actual financial ledger system that we were paying for. You know, all the functionalities were going to waste, and we were doing everything manually. And we had 13 different shared inboxes managed by different teams. So you might know how confusing that is for anybody trying to contact finance about anything. And we only had one mass upload going into our ledger. So everything else was done manually. And absolutely no automation whatsoever. We had manual processes coming out of our ears. The documentation of it filled lots of folders. So not a great position. But if we skip forward to now, so 2 and a bit years later, we've now got 43 separate Power Automate flows all running in the background doing the manual processes that we're looking at. We have 31 flows in Freshworks, which is like a IT service desk type of thing, which allows us to automate what's going in our shared inboxes. And I reckon we've probably saved over 40 hours per month, at least through these flows. So you can see the kind of contrast in what we would do and where we were to where we are now. We didn't just kind of stumble over something and it all kind of happened. We didn't end up with an extra 40 hours per month to do extra work and 74 workflows. We had to start somewhere. So I'm someone who can procrastinate very easily, sometimes for days, hours, weeks. I'm sure there's a few people out there as well who do the same. An example, I called the mechanic yesterday to get the brakes tested on my car, which I was meant to do since January. So, that's the type of level of procrastination we're talking about here. So how the saying that I say to myself, and that is, just start. If you want to do something, you don't know how to go or what you're going to do with it. If you can see an endpoint, just start heading towards it. So that's what we did. We created our first Power Automate to collect shout-outs from the team, and that's every month we have a meeting for the whole department, and if someone in the team somewhere has done something really well and you want to say thank you to them, you shout out and everyone gives you a little round of applause and you get to feel a bit special about it. I've had a few, I did tell you what, I did feel a bit special, but we wanted to automate how that's done. So we created a form to do it, a little Power Automate flow in the background to put it into a list for us, and then copy and paste into a slide to go on a PowerPoint presentation to be presented at the monthly meeting, which was really our first delve into it. So we just kind of started, identify something, start, and get it on. From there, we just grew. We just started identifying more things that we can automate. And you can do it too. Identify one thing, start with that, learn about it, go from there. With that. Right. So one of the simplest things we've done, and I've included in these slides the export from our third-party payments. So this is the process that I'm pretty sure everybody has to do, where you get your payroll documentation in. It's got third-party information that's sent out to anyone who's had to pay a third party out of the salary. This information is taken by our transactional team, split out, and then had to send emails out to wherever they need to go to. The process itself, it takes 30 minutes to split out that information, whereas it's taking up to 3 hours to send out the emails. So trying to automate an end-to-end process was a bit too much, really. The time saved and splitting out the information was too complicated to do it for the amount of time saved. But the emails, they take about 3 hours per month to send out. So we created a workflow to send the emails out. And the way that this works is we have our trigger at the top. I've heard a few people talk about. So when the file's created, we created the SharePoint file, and you drag and drop the file into SharePoint. The flow then checks to make sure that they've got the file and brings all the information from SharePoint into the flow. And then a couple of steps down the line, it sends out an email if there's a file there to be sent. It's automatically triggered, so we don't have to do anything manually. It just kind of runs in the background. The email that gets sent to the right person with the right reference numbers, reducing out any human error that could occur. It stops you having to type it or the hi, how are you? Hope you had a good weekend, and so on and so forth emails. It's all done, dusted for you, and you don't have to do anything. So that sends out an email to whoever the third-party recipient is, whichever, depending on which folder you dropped it into, and that's you done. So yeah, 3 hours saved. Very, very simple process. And like I say, I've included it in slides here, which will be available afterwards for you guys to just be able to drag and import it straight away, and that'll hopefully then save you 3 hours. Sending an email, 31 different emails every month, was time consuming and very open to human error. Okay, but that's easy. That's an easy one. Something a little bit more complicated that we can do, just to kind of show the power that we've got behind Power Automate. VDU forms. So as you can see, I wear glasses. A few other people wear glasses. Sometimes you want to claim for our eye tests, which is what VDU forms do. Before, we had a paper-based form that went out. So someone says, I want to claim for my glasses. Okay, here you go. He'll fill this form in. They return the form. It's only half filled in. You go back. Okay, can you fill the rest in, please? Have you got authorization from this person? Please put the receipt on. The Microsoft form that we've got takes all that away. If you don't fill in every single part of it that we need, the form doesn't get submitted. So straight away, we've cut out a whole load of emails that you can't even really quantify the amount of time you'll be able to save on it. Again, the trigger is when the form is submitted. We get the response details back in, and what we do is bring those into the Power Automate flow, which is what you have to do with every flow. And in this complicating bit of JSON formula thing, because we have a receipt uploaded with the flow, with the form, that's held within Microsoft OneDrive. So what this does, it goes out to OneDrive and gives attributes to all the little bits and pieces that we need to be able to bring into the flow the information that we need to send out for authorization a little bit later on. When it's done that, we create a SharePoint list, and that list will capture every single bit of information that was put into the form at that point, and also it'll attach into the list the attachment that was there as well. They apply to each. We get the file content and bring that into the flow at this point, so that we can then attach it further on into the emails that we go further down. Once that's all kind of done, gone too far. Once that's done, we send an approval email out to the budget holder. They fill in with the budget holder name. And if it's approved, well, happy days. We send an email out to tell the person automatically. We send an email out to the person who requested it, saying it's all been approved. You'll get your payment in the next 3 to 5 days. Just look out for it, and so on and so forth. And we'll send an email out to our transactions team, who then go off and pay the VDU form claim. If it's a no, then they get an email again, the person who requested it, to say no, and the reasons why it was rejected. And then this goes off, which you can't see on here, but it goes off and it updates the SharePoint list again with what's been going on and why it's going on, why it's been going on. And then we've got a full audit trail of everything that's happened when someone submitted a VDU form. Why is it important for that? Well, if someone's submitting 5 VDU form claims with slightly different names or something, we can easily see that within the SharePoint list. So it's really good for fraud prevention and things like that. So that's a little bit more complicated and includes an approval. Really useful for things like Microsoft Forms, which the other speakers have spoken about today. If you remember on one of my earlier slides, I mentioned that we had 13 different inboxes. And that's just for our one department. We've got 13 inboxes. So can you imagine someone trying to contact the finance department for something and choosing from a list of 13 inboxes? I got confused about it. never mind like someone on a ward who just wants to get something done. So we have an ambition for a single point of entry into the finance department. We also have an ambition to have a named person against every query we get into it. So the solution was Freshworks. And what Freshworks is really good at doing is getting the shared inboxes, putting them in one place, and then being able to categorize what kind of queries we're getting. We have workflows behind everything that's going on, so that then instead of someone having to go into an inbox and categorize things and look through things, it automatically gets done for us. So workflows. Good thing about the workflows, it kind of just works out the same as Microsoft Forms and Power Automate. Whereas Microsoft Forms should have a link to go to. Instead, we have a service catalog, which is linked in our intranet. So that works like Microsoft Forms. Was a bit more difficult to kind of set it up than Microsoft Forms, but it's only slightly. But the workflows within Freshworks are just as powerful as Power Automate and a little bit easier to understand, I think. Not only that, but it can link into third-party apps. So we can link it into different bits and pieces that we've got installed, as long as we've got like an API key or something like that within Power Automate, and as long as IT says yes, and that's obviously a big thing for us, IT saying no quite a lot. But we can also have the ability to use object-oriented programming to update lists. So we have a list of budget holders against cost centers. Instead of having someone type in the budget holder, we can go to our object, pull that into the workflow, and it automatically gets approved. And if that person ever changes, we don't have to go and change a workflow or anything like that. We just go in and change the list. It changes once and it updates every single workflow. So that's really useful. What we're doing with them now, so we had quite a lot of Microsoft Forms probably about a year ago, and we're going to use Freshworks where we can to replace Microsoft Forms and Power Automate, so that things are all in one area. Managers can see kind of what's going on, what work's coming in, and then we can proactively tackle any issues that we kind of see. There is a couple of limitations within Freshworks that Power Automate doesn't have, and that's generally around how Freshworks is built up. For instance, we have a URL. So the reason we're using VDU forms within Power Automate and not bringing them into Freshworks is because the URLs for attachments refreshes every 24 hours in Freshworks, and if you send out an authorization, if they come to it a couple of days later and they'll go to look at the link, the link's expired. So we have to be wary of those kind of limitations when designing which system we want to use for which things. So a bit of an example. So this is exactly how a workflow looks. Everyone see that? That's not too small. Yeah. So this is exactly how it is. So here we have our trigger when a ticket is raised. So we call a ticket. So a ticket is just could be an email in or a request coming in that's filled in by a form. This one's for our Cloudbridge notification. So we have a third-party forecasting solution that updates overnight, pulling information from Ledger going one way and pushes information back into Ledger another way. If it's successful, great. We don't need to do anything. But if it's not successful, we need to take some actions to figure out why it's not successful. But if you can imagine coming in before coffee in the morning, looking at an email that was sent at 4 a.m. and seeing whether something is successful or not, having to look down a long list of success, and then there's a failure right at the bottom. Very easy to miss. This reduces any of that human error that's going to come into that by, instead of just making us look at the email and make a decision based on what's included in the email, it makes a decision for us based on the parameters that we've set around it. If it's a success, I say great, goes along the top row. We set our categories up so that we can analyze it later to make sure everything's a success. This is part of the object-oriented programming that we were talking about before, where we go off and read a different list to bring that list back in to set another category, and then we set it to closed because we don't need to do anything with it. If it's failed, does exactly the same thing, but sets a couple of different categories. Again, reads from the object to be able to bring that information in for us, and then it sets some properties around the ticket for us to look at. It gives us the tasks that we need to perform to be able to go into the system to be able to fix kind of what's gone wrong. So, kind of what's next? So I think we've come quite far in the past couple of years. So we're going to keep on expanding Freshworks, incorporating more of the shared inboxes we've got. We've currently got 2 on there fully. We're halfway through doing another one, which means we've got 10 more inboxes to go, and they're only going to get more and more complicated. More Power Automate implementations. We're not averse to using Power Automate. Now we've got a new shiny Freshworks tool. You use the best tool for the job, and sometimes that's Power Automate. And we can use Power Automate to link in Microsoft systems into Freshworks by using Power Automate, because the Freshworks works by sending an email. So any email that goes in, we can move emails from people's inboxes into Freshworks, then have a workflow running behind those emails that come in. We're very ambitious to want to import data through SSIS into SQL. So if anyone knows anything about SSIS, it's very hard to find people that actually do. Please get in contact. We built our SQL data warehouse about a year ago now, so we're looking to try and automate everything that's kind of going into there. And again, the SSIS tool is probably the best one to do. We tried to use Power Automate to do this, but IT said no, we can't link the server for you. So stuck with what we've got, unfortunately. But looking back a couple of years ago, I couldn't imagine where we were kind of today, based on where we were at that time. Wouldn't have really thought it was possible. So anything that kind of comes up, we're always open to kind of hearing about it and doing it. Really, we've got a saying that we use all the time in the systems team, and that's pinch with pride. I'm absolutely happy to pinch any of your ideas that come out, and I'm happy for you to pinch my ideas also. And in fact, I'll even help you implement them. So, thank you for your time today. If you need help, don't hesitate to get in touch. I'm generally active on the software skills channel in NHS Finance, so just tag me in your post so I can see it. I'll get around to responding. So if you're still wondering what to do and where to go, just start using Power Automate. It will, you'll be able to build on it very quickly, very easily. So, any questions, anybody?
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Joseph. That was really good. I've not come across Freshworks before, admittedly. So, how did you come around to getting lots of claps in the chat there? How did you come to decide on that one? Was there a process for considering it, or keen to?
Not really a process for considering it. It was all what our IT department used.
Okay. Yeah.
So when the ambition came down from the director of finance to say we need to have a single point of entry, and these were the things where that people in the service were struggling with when contacting finances. So when we were looking around at how to kind of solve these issues and really reach that ambition of having that single point of entry, Freshworks kept on coming back again and again, kind of in the discussions we were having with our team. So we kind of put a business case together and just went and got some funding to get some licenses for it, talked to IT, and now we work fairly closely with our IT department to implement it. We implemented it back in March for the systems team, and management accounts went next in June, I think. And so far, it's been kind of revolutionary, like Freshworks. If you can get it, I would highly recommend getting Freshworks or something similar. Obviously, I'm not paid by them or anything.
Other suppliers are available, of course. Yeah. Yeah. There's those are right questions. So we're keen if anyone put up their hand. But there's a few people talking about SSIS imports. In fact, you've got a volunteer in Robert Harris down in Cornwall who's going to see if we can find a contact for how the information services teams did it. So you might have some light there. There's Jamie's just asked a question. Thanks, Jamie. What tool do you use for mapping your processes when designing new ones?
The tool we use is called Draw.io. So if you type into Chrome, Firefox, Edge, your browser preference, Draw.io, it's a completely free tool that you can use to design and draw your process. There's one in there in one of the slides about the third-party automation. And the top one was from Draw.io. It's very easy to use. James linked it there, and cheaper than Visio because it's free, really. So.
Brilliant. Any other final questions here? Unless I've missed any, which I have a habit of doing. No, I think that's it. Thanks so much, Joseph. It's really good to see you again. And really good. And yeah, if you want to catch Joseph, he's on the Software Skills channel as well. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us. It's been really good.
Thanks, everyone.
Right. So that brings us to the end of our day. I think it's been really useful. What a fantastic day we've had. We've started off with Jamie, who took us through Power Automate Web and Power Apps. That virtual walking challenge is great, and the accountability card as well. Dr. Nina talked to us about attended Power Automate Desktop and the incredibly detailed process mining she's gone through with that, and looking at the sort of different use cases, let's say, of Visual Basic and Power Automate Desktop, and how there's crossover and appropriateness there. Paul and Dan looked at Full Tilt Blue Prism. Amazing gains they've made. That was 1,500 hours down to 25, I think, which is an extraordinary achievement there. And then we had Adam taking us on a step-by-step journey from the paper process to efficient processes, and Joseph, who's got a lot of bots going, 43 bots going with 40 hours saved a month, which is fantastic. And started with a team engagement MS form to get everyone, bringing them along. I think that's really important. It seems like the overarching message is bringing the teams with you is a really key piece of this. You can have all of the change in processes ready to go, but you need those people brought on along with you. This is the first time we've done an event like this, and there are about 250 in the end signed up and registered. 150, 130 have stayed with us during today. So if there's demand or increasing demand for stuff like this, it was very hard to find the speakers we found because you're all hiding somewhere. We don't know where. I've been trying to work it out, but me and Becky have been scouring NHS Finance to find you all. So thank you to the speakers that volunteered. It's been really valuable. And if you would consider or have anything going, even small or larger scale, that you would be happy sharing, we'd love to put another one of these on again, and sort of showcase more of the great stuff you're doing. There's a lot to be done with these Power Apps, so it'd be really good to start showcasing wider experience and challenges, so that the forum can also start trying to help you in getting the IT team to say yes a bit more once in a while. Wouldn't that be nice? Thank you very much, and thanks to Becky, who's been behind the scenes making everything work as well. If you could fill in the form, and I'll leave the sort of links up in the background for a few minutes whilst everyone signs off. But thanks very much again, and yeah, have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
Thank you.